Hello everyone, System Chalk here with the 21st episode of the Dancer DLC for Cultist Simulator, and you may wonder why I'm starting on the main screen here, and this is just to draw some attention. Throughout this playthrough there have actually been quite a few updates pushed through in terms of the game, and I think there's obviously the ones that, provoked a lot of very strong opinions. But I'm not entirely sure how many people who play this game regularly check the news or the patch notes. I tend to very briefly check them, but there winds up every once in a while being a few details which are not just technical. I believe the flower images here are related to the game behind the game, which I am completely incapable of participating in. But there were a couple that I wanted to draw. So some of these are, older ones. I think this one's from May, but there have been 3 for June. And obviously there's a lot about the cards. One that drew my attention in particular was narrow the grid snap so that you can put cards immediately below each other at grid snap. This only happens in new games, so people's card arrangements aren't messed up. This sort of thing I find really helpful because, of course, once I lock into a session for a series, I'm usually not going to be making a new game. And to a certain extent, I've sometimes made it so that I just want to stay on one particular patch, although most of the patches tend not to do a lot of substantial changes. Or at least enough that it's like not a deal breaker for the playthrough. But what I wanted to draw your attention to was with Dahlia. This is actually, weirdly enough, how I wound up finding my way through the Priest DLC. Because every once in a while, you'll see some things like hardened against some crashes from less well-behaved mods. Well, I haven't been playing with mods. Some of you may not, but chances are this is more of a technical thing where you'll say, okay, nice to know, but this isn't going to affect my basic game experience. But here, prisoners can now be freed, murdered, or enlightened. This is obviously very different from not just what I've been doing this playthrough, but so far as I can tell, this is different from any time that I've ever played Cultist Simulator. And this is a really good example of how I can get very set in my ways in terms of playing this game, and then having, I think somebody in the comments said, an alternate history form in front of me. So every once in a while, I do actually find it helpful to check these things out. And I will say, this is a belated credit to Weather Factory, but I really like the new way that they've handled the news. The old one used to be that you would sort of scroll through, and most recent would be at the top and the oldest would be at the bottom. And that's not necessarily bad, but when you have a detail like, prisoners can now be freed, murdered, or enlightened, the likelihood that you're going to be scrolling down all the way and looking at that particular tick is pretty low. Whereas if you're going through, each of these individual sections, you have a little more of a chance of seeing some of the important details. So anyways, I just wanted to mention that because this was news to me, and it was a nice chance for me to check out the news. And of course, I actually really appreciate that Weather Factory's been putting so much effort into the patches. And this is largely because I was discouraged by some of the comments that I saw with regards to the card placement, because at least as far as I'm concerned, it's not a problem anymore. Like it was one where I was like, okay, I'm really not going to play the new update until this is fixed. And, I went through the Priest, that was fine. But then there was a point where, with this playthrough, I'm like, okay, so I'm running into a few problems, but this isn't the end of the world, let's say. So at that point, I'm like, okay, well, I can work with this. And then on top of, at this point now, I don't really notice. I think like every once in a while, I'll have a little difficulty with a really precise placement. But I mean, in this case, it's like I wouldn't have even commented on it if there hadn't been the preceding trouble. And the reason I wanted to highlight this was just, at least now, I'm not going to pretend that I can know the contents of, Alexis or Lottie's heads. But I know with me, when, I just kind of open the door of the internet and it's like, oh, everybody's telling me how awful I am. That doesn't really bring me to do my best work. It's usually the time where I wind up shutting off, which is not always great if I want to get things done. But it's not just that I think the game got through the trouble spot. And again, like I don't want to minimize it. Like my revealed preferences were such that I opted out of the new patch for a while. But it is something I actually really appreciate, that instead of getting discouraged by it, it was something that Weather Factory didn't just put the time into, but really seems to have put out a whole lot of of extra work. There seemed to be a patch sort of every week to help deal with this sort of stuff. And at least for me, it's something that I appreciated. I think partly, if anything, just because it reminds me of my old, reminds me of the time, when it was in Kickstarter and there were big new updates with lots of new things coming into it. But anyways, I'm sorry, I know it's been 5 or 6 minutes of introduction, which is always a terrible thing on YouTube, but it's a chance to talk a little bit about the state of the game, and hopefully some of you will find that news tab helpful. So I think I'd been going through some followers for a bit, and I know I need to bring some people up to disciples, but I can't remember if I brought this up on the broadcast or if I just noticed it after closing, but I think I have an acquaintance somewhere on the table here. It was like a moth follower, so Porter or Sylvia. Okay, so we need to bring her in, but that sort of stuff I'm not that worried about, because we've been bumping people up. I also know when it comes to the moth followers, they're going to have a little bit of an advantage in terms of moving up in the world anyway. We have, for some reason, been exploring. I'm trying to remember why I brought the bomb maker in. Again, this is one of the reasons I wanted some lead in for this episode, because I'm actually struggling a little bit to remember what I was trying to do. It might have been that I wanted to try and summon something with the bomb maker. I believe we can get away with a Callagine now. So, although it makes me wonder where I think I'm going to get my knock from. So, we'll think about that, I suppose. We've got the Stag Doors riddle, which we can't solve yet. And then we have a job to do, and again, I'm wondering what the deal is with my work. I didn't really leave this in a very good spot, did I? Okay, so let's think a little bit about some next steps then. So we've got the study verb. It looks like we've read all of the books, which, great, but now I suppose the question is, what do I do with my time? Probably the best answer to that is to try and level up some of my lore. Now, I could try and move up the Wood Whispers. I could try and move up Secret Histories. Wood Whispers would require a Glimmering, which I do have. And a Furtive Truth would... Actually, hang on. Yeah, we already have an Ecdysis Parable. Well, I mean, I suppose we could take the Ecdysis Parable and move it up, but in that case we would also need Fascination or the Rarefied Mind, which we do not have. So, I think probably Secret Histories might be the better place to go, and I think that needs Erudition. Yes. Okay, so we don't have Erudition on the table right now, so that tells us what to do with our study verb. Read whatever's to hand. The world is awash with printed words. Even the newspapers contain knowledge sometimes. So the next question would be, I've got my work slot, so we aren't immediately losing our job at the Gaiety. So I suppose the question would be, do I want to try something else? Is there a better use for the I mean, one thing I could try is see, okay, so if I had clever ideas with the Rite of the Crucible Soul, what was I trying to do with that? So we could use an invocation. Oh, well, with invocations, I suppose I could try a Locksmith's Secret. That feels very weak. And then for instruments, well, I would need... Yes. Well, that clearly doesn't work. So why did I think there was an instrument that I could use? So it would have to be it would have to be a winter instrument in this case, and we don't have the manacles. Or, of course, it could be a knock instrument. So this is actually kind of a recommendation for painting once I start getting some pigments. But yes, I suspect I wasn't thinking straight when I hired this bomb maker. So we'll just let them... We'll probably betray them and lock them up, but let's go back to the Gaiety and make some money. The stage awaits, hot and clean and bare and bright. If I move the moves and step the steps and do what is required, they'll pay me. If hunters found notoriety, they'll use it. By the way, I do apologize. It feels like I'm getting slight lags in the background. I did have a job running in the background, which should have wrapped up a little bit before I started streaming, but it feels like it might be interrupting with the broadcast a little bit. So hopefully that will that won't continue on into the follow-up episodes. I just wanted to try and make sure that I got at least... Actually, this may be interesting. If it feels like the Monday episodes are sometimes a little rushed or... you know, like lower quality, let's say. So number one, I probably just need to like ramp up. Like I need to get into the zone a little bit. But practically number two, because I normally will record these on the weekend, not always, but sometimes, I'll wind up, like, so in this case, I'm actually recording these a little bit early. But I do try to get these episodes done reasonably quickly because I also need to make sure that I give YouTube enough time to turn them into the high definition videos. So normally I try and get Mondays done as quickly as I can, and then for the rest of the week, you know, I might be able to do them at a time when I'm a little more relaxed or when everything's ready to go. But I figured that's my best option as far as excuses go. So let's focus on the game again, though. So we've got the Lodge of the Sage Knight. Now I'm actually going to bring this up because I got a... Oh, well, I guess now we can upgrade my my moth lore. I was interested. Somebody had asked a question in the comments about whether or not the Suppression Bureau have breached the Mansis based on what the woman in the Blue Silk Pavilion, Teresa Gallagher, says. And I thought that was really interesting because, of course, I've always taken it for granted. I always find it interesting to get those kinds of questions because, for me, I have the same information everyone else does, and so. But I know that there are differences of opinion on some aspects of the game, so I'm always reluctant to speak with authority on these topics. But so far as I can tell, yes, it's actually probably one of the reasons why the Lodge of the Sage Knight is interesting. Especially, too, because you don't necessarily see references to the Suppression Bureau getting any further than this. And we know that the Stag Door is actually quite a special place. It's, it's you become a no when you pass it. And so that could imply a certain, like a protection, or it could imply a lack of ability on the part of the Suppression Bureau. It could be that some, but not all, have gone through it. But there is something really interesting, about the idea of the Suppression Bureau entering into the Mansis and sort of having conversations with people, trying to turn them into informants. But also the fact that some of the other books, I mean, I'm largely repeating what I said in reply to the comment, but of course there's some references in the books to the fact that the Suppression Bureau has permitted their publication, or at least has tolerated them. But it was the images that were sort of beyond the pale. So, in this case here, I don't know if it's ever fully... I don't know if the exact relationship between the Suppression Bureau and the larger world is ever really expanded on all that much. But it is... I think it's definitely a lot more interesting than the single note of, they're all... Like, I guess I'd put it to you this way. Like, the Suppression Bureau is not... they're not the worms, right? Everything will not become nowhere if the Suppression Bureau gets their way. For those of you who like White Wolf stuff, it makes me think a little bit about Mage the Ascension, which I really only read about rather than played, but there was something very interesting about the idea between the mages and the technocracy, and I think it was something of an acknowledgement in terms of the existence of magic, but it was much more a question in terms of sort of being the stewards of that knowledge and whether or not you could sort of, I suppose, trust people to, you know, to make their own way with this, or to, you know, to have a more controlled environment. I don't suspect that that's what's going on exactly in terms of the secret histories, but I do, like, it's kind of my little mapping for myself. Although again, White Wolf is, I feel like there's probably an overlap between people who like Cultist Simulator and White Wolf stuff, but I realize that's something of a dated reference. Anyways, last night in the billowing blue of the Lodge of the Sage Knight, I sat on velvet cushions and watched two dead contend with shining swords. They came with the place, said the woman who rules here now, the one who once called herself Gallagher. I was not the Sage Knight, if that's what you're wondering. He went higher in the Mansis long before I came here. My attention has drifted. The swords sparkle like falling water. The dead move like dancers. Alright, it would be nice if I can get rid of this fascination. It is moth, though, so I could use that in a... Yeah, you know what, let's not worry too much about it. Let's just head back to the White Door and see if we can get some more goodies. If nothing else, I will be able to, like, if there is a Season of Visions that comes up, I'll be able to deal with it in time. I'm safe for now. My adversary has not enough evidence to bring a case against me, and they found no new clues. Alright, well, we gotta make a decision about that bomb maker sooner or later. And looks like in this case we weren't, we didn't have much happen. So I think we'll just head straight back in. Stage awaits, hot and clean and bare and bright. If I move the moves and step the steps and do what is required, they'll pay me. So, we were talking about getting some heart followers to sort of move up and deal with our reputation. Better not, I must be careful of the company I keep. Where do we put Eldridge? Right here. So, we wanted to make sure that I dealt with the Suppression Bureau first, or the Weary Detective specifically. I suppose the question now is, do I want to send followers out? Oh, I think I remember why we did the bomb maker. I think it was just so that I could have a backup for the expedition. This will also be a nice way that I can extend them, so let's work with that. We'll get oh wait, I'm probably gonna have to wait a couple seconds. Yeah, we're almost certainly turning Laidlaw into a disciple. There we go. Now the scissors, and then the knife. Now the wood, and then the bones. Now the flutter of the moon, and then the dappling of the soul. He was blood, and so will we be. Laidlaw has learnt the cleverest uses of fire and copper, wax and acid. Alright, so I don't have any immediate gaps, so I'm going to assume that Laidlaw went here. So, of course, I could try and move up some of the, some of the other Forge followers, but in this case, we're in good enough shape that we can get the job done. I need to figure out a better way. I can never remember where I store most of the stuff. So I'll put the doll over here. We're obviously going to need to come up with a better system for my possessions once we start getting a few more. Okay, so yes, right now I think we'll just use the bomb maker in the expedition. That'll give me a little more time to betray them and put them in the cupboard. It'll also let me see a little bit more about how that mechanic works, but in this case I do need the extra forge. So let's start with Cater and Hero. And we'll We should only need the 1 funds, but I always find this a nice little bank, so... So Cater and Hero. It's been abandoned since the explosion, when both the owners died. The machine stands silent. The building is a collapsing shell. Mr. Cater was known to display peculiar trinkets in his office. Perhaps some may yet remain. The remaining factory walls could topple at any moment. Blackened timbers creak in pain. We must equip ourselves properly and move with dreadful care. Okay, so before we go too much further, what I would like to do here is... Actually, it occurred to me I can't use the fascination if I'm going to do this, but I still want to. I want to move up a... I want to move up a forge follower in case we lose Laidlaw or the bomb maker. The follower will kneel as a novice and rise as an initiate. I will administer the necessary oaths myself. And just remember Valsine. Valsine's ingenuities are endless, and her grip is stronger than a blacksmith's. And the words contain knowledge, and now I contain it. It's a little like theft, and a little like feasting, and a little like the progress of an infectious disease. So we got this erudition so we could move up our secret history's knowledge. History is less certain than we are taught. I can learn from the study of its blurred edges. Once we have Valsine, I'll be willing to turn around and work with the turn in the commission. Now, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do here with this icy atmosphere, because again, a Callagine would actually be very helpful. But I can't remember if I have everything I need, and the cost of getting this wrong is that I have I have dread to deal with. On the other hand, this is not a bad time for me to do it, because I am going to be bringing Sylvia into the fold. So, last night the white door was bright as a mirror, bright as fresh snow, bright as the migraine moon. I remember its brightness, but I remember its chill the most. I laid my cheek against it. I still feel the ache of its cold in my skull. So the air crisps the skin, frost marks the glass. So I'm going to wait a little while on Dream here, just because I have a couple of things that I may want to do with it. I always hate leaving verbs idle, but this is not a bad time to do that. Okay, Season of Sickness. We have health on the table, but I don't think we're going to have the vitality anymore, so that's, again, a job for the study verb at this point. A half-glimpsed wistfulness has touched me, so we may have a little bit of trouble with this restlessness. It kind of depends. Nope, we're good. Tonight I sense an opportunity. Tonight I could attract attention if I cease to hold back, if I commit myself more fully. Tonight they'll notice that. I felt all their eyes upon me. Afterwards I received a gift from an admirer. Too gaudy for my taste, but I can sell it in the second-hand market. Okay. So this is a chance for me to see if I can make something of the sunset right. So if we take the icy atmosphere, now we would need probably a pretty, well, no, we can still work with this. Let's try the Ardent Orison, and we will maybe bring in Enid or Neville. Alright, so I found a useful conjunction of aspects, but I will need more power. To call forth the smoky, tricksy entity, I will need a significant power of Forge, as well as a Little Winter and Knock. Okay, so we can get a little bit more by putting the bomb maker in, but I suspect we're going to come up short still. We'll see though. The expedition continues. Our expedition plans for the next challenge. It'll consume funds. I can add funds now, or I could send another follower. So, treacherous ground, pits and quags and sudden tumbles. The earth here cannot be trusted. We will need strong hands or a clear sight, forge or lantern. Right, this is a puzzle with missing pieces. I might find those pieces in odd corners of scholarship. And now the scissors and then the knife. Now the wood and then the bones. Now the flutter of the moon and then the dappling of the soul. He was blood, and so we will be. So Valsine is not a machine. We are reasonably confident of that, because she has been observed now and then to commit quite human errors. Alright. So I am going to take... One of the reasons why I kept this stuff open was I wanted a really quick chance. I don't think the difference of 1 point is gonna move the needle, but yeah, it was worth a shot. Okay, so in this case, this is going to be the time we bring in Sylvia. We don't have the immediate need of getting a forge follower in, so we'll take the Wildwood Club. Actually, yeah, this is 6, so I have some time. So we'll talk to Dr. Adim first. This is just so I can get the cooldown working on the commission. I have what the doctor requested. And we will go back to the Gaiety for some money. Stage awaits, hot and clean and bare and bright. If I move the moves and step the steps and do what is required, they'll pay me. This also might have the chance of generating some vitality for me, but I received the currency of the secret world and my patron has let tantalizing information slip. So this is one of the times I would actually start using my heart follower to clean up the reputation, because of course here the mystique means there's a 50-50 chance of the notoriety getting picked up by the heart follower rather than the sorry, like there's a 50-50 chance of getting rid of notoriety when I use a heart follower, which isn't great. If you're giving up a talk verb, which is useful for other things, like maybe you'd like a little bit more certainty than what that offers you. But for the time being, we'll do what we said originally. We'll bring Sylvia into the Wildwood Club. I know I'm getting close to the end of the time. I'll probably run a little bit later just to make up for all of the news that I was talking about. Right. Sylvia lost her eye in the woods when she was 9 years old. Every year at Candlemas, she returns to the place she buried it. And I missed the opportunity to get rid of the fascination. I forgot that the Fleeting Reminiscence has its own timer. Well, I know that it has a timer, but I kind of forgot. I forgot that I needed to check against what was required. So, but we also, it's less than a minute, so we don't have a Season of Visions coming up. I do, however, want to work on some vitality. Aha, there it is. You've resolved a knowledge challenge. We're mud-spattered and thorn-scratched, but we made it through. Okay, good. So the bomb maker is intact. Actually, at this point... Well, at this point I should just wait and... and dream away the sickness. But I probably could have gotten a little... Could have been a little earlier in terms of getting rid of the... in terms of using the dream slot. Moth sheds its skin, the novice must only shed their clothes and their past. Sylvia has detailed knowledge of roof ridges, of the river at low tide, of Irish whiskey, and of conjuring tricks. Okay, so I think we've got all believers now, if I'm not mistaken. It actually wouldn't be a bad time for me to double check here, so I think it's, yeah, this is probably where I said we were in the previous episode, but incorrectly, where it's only hangers-on who are left. But I was trying to think what I wanted to do with the talk verb, because I believe we already moved a heart follower up to a disciple. I think it was Clovette, if I remember correctly. Yep, so we can try and get rid of this mystique, or we could try and bring about some more disciples. I can never remember, I think it's heart that we need for St. Agnes Hospital. We would want either lantern or knock for the Forgotten Mithraeum. Probably moth for the Congregation of St. Felix of Shurin and Strathcoins. So there are probably a few people I'd like to move up before we go too far down the... like the eliminating reputation path. Let's I think I'm going to bring some more heart followers in first. So we'll use the fascination in this case. Dorothy is an enthusiastic sort. I have turned her enthusiasm to our advantage. Actually, I don't think this is going to let me get by with it. Yeah, okay. My follower will kneel as a novice and rise as an initiate. I will administer the necessary oaths myself. And tonight I sense an opportunity. Tonight I could attract attention if I cease to hold back, if I commit myself more fully. Tonight they'll notice that. I felt all their eyes upon me. Afterwards, I received a gift from an admirer. Too gaudy for my taste, but I can sell it on the second-hand market. Alright. So again, we don't have any, we don't have much to do other than our performances. And once the study is done, we'll study once the research is done, or the upgrade for the lore, we'll study with health so that we can get a vitality to clear out. In this case, actually, it doesn't make sense for me to hold back because it's going to take us a minute to study the vitality anyway. This illness has damaged my health. I will need to rest before I'm fully recovered. I've increased my knowledge of the secret histories behind the one we know. So, another forgotten chronicle, a story of a city without a gate, of a queen who was not born, of a war which was not fought. And here we'll study fresh air and exercise, which I'm probably due for. Long walks kill cobwebs. Here's the capacious room where Mr. Cater once watched his workers on the factory floor. The window glass is long gone, and rats and crows have made this place their battleground, but perhaps there is still something of use here. Now the scissors and then the knife, now the wood and then the bones, now the flutter of the moon and then the dappling of the soul. He was blood, and so we will be. Dorothy's enthusiasm has become obsession. She will not cease, and how she loves to dance. So once again, we will move up our heart followers. This is just because I have a slight impression that that basically the heart's going to be useful for expeditions as well as getting rid of evidence. So in this case, they kind of bumped up in terms of priority. That's also going to be true for Neville, Enid, Pope Clifton, Cat Caro, and Slee, because Lantern would have been helpful at Cater and Hero. It'll also be potentially useful at the Forgotten Mithram. Although in the case of Neville and Enid, it's easier to. Oh, I forgot to give it my all. I stayed aloof. I moved the moves and stepped the steps and did what was required, and now they'll pay me. Although it's always nice to. I actually quite like the writing on that one, so. The stage awaits, hot and clean and bare and bright. If I move the moves and step the steps and do what is required, they'll pay me. Alright, well, there's the Chorus of the Heart. A little late, but I won't complain. Cater's office. 2 floorboards lift away to reveal a hollow beneath Cater's desk. The rats have made free with the biscuits he stored there against the peckishness which haunts the entrepreneur. But they could not penetrate this iron lockbox. A moment with a crowbar will open it. So, a bronze spintrea. A vital pigment. It is not usual for a red this red to survive the death of the body. I think we're going to try and turn that into a painting right away. A Meruvine idol. In fact, one... I kind of wanted to highlight this, as I feel bad doing it now that we're kind of running into the overtime, but one thing that I quite like about Cultist Simulator, and I don't think I've ever pointed this out about the Meruvine idol, because it doesn't really... This is the sort of thing, this is actually true of a lot of details in Cultist Simulator, is that there are very narrow slivers of history that are present in this game. But because they are, either narrow or because they are, just little details. And again, I don't at all want to suggest that all of this stuff is stuff that I've known right away. Generally, if there's stuff about Rome, I have a chance. If it's, anywhere else, well, not just Rome, but bit of Greece as well. But it depends on times, right? There's some bits of history I know better than others, I guess I'm trying to say. But because this game deals with a lot of sort of strange and made up places, and particularly alternate histories, it's sometimes not necessarily obvious about. It's sometimes not obvious about. Maybe how much of this game actually is in the real world. So, like, a decent example here would be I didn't realize that Gildersleeve's So I didn't know Kerner and Goethe was a real book, and then I found it when I was looking through some classic stuff, which I thought was really interesting. And then somebody pointed out that Gildersleeves is in fact also a Latin book. So I found that was kind of interesting. And then I know one thing that surprised a few viewers was to find out that Ibn al-Adim is in fact a historical figure. But in this case, I'll draw your attention to the Merovine idol. So the Merovi would make little wooden idols to placate the witch twins they feared in their lake. The lake is almost dry now, but the idols and the witch twins yet remained, yet shadowed with the aspect of the heart. So the Merovi are actually, I don't know if I don't think they would count as a specific people, but in this case, like sorry, I just got a message. I'm sorry, I'm actually probably going to have to wrap this up a little sooner than I was intending to. So I'll try and save this for another one. But yeah, anyways, this is a real place. So the idea of these idols, again, like the idea that these people, I don't know if there's any historical record of this town, like, making idols to throw in the lake. But one of the things I've definitely found the more that I play Cultist Simulator is that if there's a reference to a place, chances are that place is actually a place in history. That might be a little bit too much. Because like now I'm just trying to think, oh well, actually there's a couple places I can think of that are not actually real places. I mean, there's so many different vaults and locations. But it's maybe one of the delights of Cultist Simulator, I'll say, is that if you look up, like, I guess the challenge of this game's popularity is that now if you try to look up some different details, chances are you're going to find Cultist Simulator references rather than real world references. But once you get past the Cultist Simulator references, and you can help yourself in Google if you put the little minus sign in front of certain terms, that'll help you clear out things that might be game related. But there's quite a bit from history that is present in this game, but because it's either again, tucked away in the little corners of history that maybe we don't pay a lot of attention to, or because it sounds very exotic, and because it exists alongside other elements that we know are fictional. I really got to finish. This is it's sometimes hard to point out. Anyways, I'm sorry because this has gone on way too long, and I'm sort of scrambling, so I'll leave it there. I'll get the rest of the book. So we've got Lord Franklin Bancroft's diaries. We've got a location that we can exploit later, an abandoned warehouse. Thank you, Bomb Maker. We'll probably betray you later. Thank you, Laidlaw. We've banked our funds. And we got some notoriety for our trouble. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, especially with the sort of belly flop of an ending. If you have enjoyed the series and have not yet subscribed, please consider doing so. There's a sudden drop, so I think I did something to really annoy people, but I've been delighted at how there seems to have been a very steady increase lately as far as people following. So again, I do appreciate and I do notice this stuff. And of course, some of you have been really, really dedicated in terms of comments and that. So if you'd like to help the videos get noticed, if you'd like to sort of help tweak the algorithm, I'd love a like, I'd love a comment, and of course those do give me a chance to also be able to interact with all of you. So that is probably the bigger reward for me, although I'm certainly not going to complain about more attention. I'm going to be back Wednesday, hopefully with a little bit more of an organized video. Until then, take care, and we'll see you in a couple days.